So this is just pharmaceutical intervention, greenwashed from a natural lens. They say, oh, well, since we started with an orange, it must be natural. Most interestingly with vitamins is that you go to a vitamin laboratory and you'll not be able to tell the difference between a pharmaceutical lab and a vitamin lab. It's the same factories, the same chemistry, the same processes, the same inputs, the same mindset and approach. Lead acetate, lead citrate, other types of heavy metals, cyanide, solvents, heat, centrifugation, precipitation. I mean, you truly have to go all out with the methodologies. You're so deep in the test tube by the time you hit vitamin C, there's a structure, a life essence, a context to nature, right? The whole is greater than the parts. We blame absolutely every illness on deficiency. Right? Oh, you have brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, you must be deficient in some sort of vitamin or perhaps mineral. Of course, the answer is always the sale of supplements, keeping you stuck in the same allopathic loop of which you were attempting to escape. So we so-called escaped the matrix just to go into some pseudo matrix that's selling you the same nonsense. You didn't wake up at all. This is, maybe unsurprisingly, the most important argument of the modern day and age. In a world where we're constantly sold pharmaceuticals, given them by force against our will as we age due to the programming, the brainwashing, and the propaganda, many of us, of course, wake up to this almost obvious narrative. Many of us move to the so-called alternative health world where we're bombarded with naturopaths, functional doctors, and of course, supplements. The supplement industry is creeping its way into the more mainstream and the pharmaceutical industry, and it's no surprise that most supplement companies are also owned by pharmaceutical companies. And what we have now is a field of greenwashed modern medicine and allopathy in the guise of natural medicine. We think that taking isolated chemicals, so-called vitamins, and even isolated minerals is bringing our bodies back to health. We're supposedly resolving our deficiencies. This narrative is just as problematic as the modern allopathy one, and it's very clear we should question this at the very foundation. Modern nutrition assumes that health can be reduced to isolated molecules. So I studied biochemistry and molecular biology in university, and largely it was centered around genomics, but the other half of it was centered around metabolism, how we use vitamins, enzymes, the biochemical pathways. But of course, biochemistry is a great reduction. It is extremely materialistic. It ignores the holistic nature of the body. It systematizes the body, and it serves only pharmaceutical interest. It serves only the nutraceutical industry, right? It doesn't serve true holistic health based on the natural fundamental principles of natural healing. One of the main tenets being treat the individual as a whole integrated being. We are not made up of isolated chemicals. Of course, this is a laboratory narrative. And so our topic today, vitamins, and whether or not they exist in nature, comes from laboratories. And of course, not nature itself. No one's ever seen a vitamin in nature. And you cannot prove the existence of a vitamin without laboratory preparations, methods, and the addition of extremely synthetic and toxic chemicals. And just because once you create a magic white powder and call it vitamin D, C, B, whatever it is, and you give it to someone who is sick, doesn't mean that you've resolved fundamentally the illness or the deficiency. This is just pharmaceutical ideology. Once again, clinical trials. If the symptoms are reduced, we must have healed the disease. But most often what happens is people are on vitamins for long periods of times with no symptom resolution. Perhaps they may have temporary symptom resolution, but often we see relapse. And that's why people end up coming through the terrain paradigm to work with individuals like myself. In the early literature, of course, we see examples of more severe so-called vitamin deficiencies, beriberi, pellagra, rickets, night blindness. And in the modern world, we blame absolutely every illness on deficiency, right? Oh, you have brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, you must be deficient in some sort of vitamin or perhaps mineral. Of course, the answer is always the sale of supplements, keeping you stuck in the same allopathic loop of which you were attempting to escape. But in the early literature, and even in the modern world, what we overlook are great confounding variables, such as the introduction of toxicity and processing to food. We adulterate the food, and then we blame it on a missing chemical in the food. So this led to scientists asking the question, what sort of chemical is missing? Because we've already begun this sort of reductionist way of thinking, this allopathic thinking. Vitaminology really started in the early 1900s after germ theory had prevailed. And we were just looking for scapegoats. and ways to sell magic white powders. When we read these isolation papers and these historical papers as well, we go over these papers quite in depth in the vitamin course in the Beyond Terrain Academy as well. We see clearly that there are between 15 to 20 steps in the isolation of vitamins. It's not as though you just extract a liquid from an orange and have vitamin C. Now, is orange juice a good source of so-called nutrition? Of course it is, right? It's a whole food. It's minimally adulterated. I suppose you could make the argument that you did process it in some capacity, but you truly didn't adulterate the form of the food, right? You're extracting maybe the liquid part from the more fibrous part. But to get vitamin C, you have to add lead acetate, lead citrate, other types of heavy metals, cyanide, solvents, heat, centrifugation, precipitation. I mean, you truly have to go all out with the methodologies. You're so deep in the test tube by the time you hit vitamin C that you have nothing that even resembles anything that looks like an orange, right? Or an adrenal tissue, which was, again, one of the original sources of supposedly vitamin C. What's proposed in this video, and the concept here that's important, is that vitamin C is just an artifact. Right? It's nothing more than just an adulterated food source. To add all of these synthetic chemicals to supposedly get this vitamin C chemical, none of the steps along the way are controlled for. So there's no use of the scientific method. And so there's no way of controlling for the fact that we've chemically altered the orange juice or the adrenal tissue to get vitamin C. And just because you can give someone who is displaying symptoms of scurvy this magic white vitamin C powder doesn't mean that you're actually addressing the root cause, because if you get rid of the magic white powder, the symptoms come back. So this is just pharmaceutical intervention greenwashed from a natural lens. They say, oh, well, since we started with an orange, it must be natural. Something that they mention in almost every single vitamin isolation paper is the addition of petroleum. We know that petroleum is the foundation of the entire pharmaceutical industry. Most, if not all, pharmaceutical drugs come from petroleum derivatives. So in the supposed isolation of these vitamins, we also add the chemical base for the creation of pharmaceutical drugs as well. So again, when we're taking these vitamins, we might see symptom reduction, but we know that just because we have symptom reduction doesn't mean the actual source of disease goes away. Like we know with ibuprofen, if you break your finger and you have inflammation, you take ibuprofen, the inflammation goes away, but the broken finger doesn't go away. So it's the same if you have gut inflammation. If you have gut inflammation caused by toxicity and you take ibuprofen and your gut inflammation goes down temporarily, it doesn't mean that your disease is gone. It just means that you've suppressed your symptoms and you're likely further storing toxicity into your system. It's the same with vitamins and all isolated nutraceuticals. Things like NAC, bromelain, creatine, L-tyrosine, melatonin. The list here truly goes on forever. If it's an isolated compound, the argument stays the same. So what we have is a field that lacks a scientific basis, and we have all of these theories about vitamins and isolated chemicals and how they make up food, but we have no objective observation of this in reality. All we have is laboratory artifacts, confounded by laboratory methods, all of which fails to utilize the scientific method. So vitamins, isolated chemicals, they stimulate, they suppress, they override signals of the body. It's temporary relief, which is misleading because we think that's healing. But again, you go to your functional doctor, you get 10, 20, 30, 40 supplements. I've seen people take thousands of dollars worth of supplements a month, and they come and talk to me and they're like, yeah, I still have my symptoms. They went away for like a couple of weeks and then they just came back full force because the root cause is not being addressed. If the symptoms return when you stop the intervention, the body was not restored to balance, the body was not recalibrated, the body was not nourished, the body was not healed. If you're having trouble with direction coming off supplements, perhaps you've seen the functional doctors and the naturopaths. I've helped tons of people detox and get off supplements, and they felt better than ever. They achieved their goals. They get exactly where they want to be in life without spending thousands of dollars a month on isolated chemicals. You can reach out for one-on-one guidance. It can be a complex paradigm shift, but work with me is truly a paradigm and a narrative shift. Truly, deficiency diseases in the context of scurvy, rickets, the more severe deficiency diseases showed up after industrialization and civilization. People consuming raw animal-based diets, or even just animal-based diets in general, had no such symptoms of these severe deficiency diseases. They came after industrialization and contamination with the processing of food using chemicals and other problematic unnatural methods. In the modern world, it's the same. All these subtle symptoms that we face, we blame on vitamin deficiencies, the fatigue, the brain fog, the gut issues, lack of focus, anxiety, depression, muscle soreness, lack of muscle growth, hair loss. We blame isolated chemicals when true deficiency is deficiency in nature. It's deficiency in whole foods in their natural form. We need raw foods in our diet. This is not a suggestion. This is observed across cultures around the entire world. Traditionally, every single human consumed raw animal foods. So again, when we go back, we see the polished grains, we see the sterilized foods, we see canned rations, monocrops. This is where true deficiency comes from. It's not deficiency in isolated chemicals. And what's most interesting to me is that a lot of these symptoms of scurvy, rickets, beriberi, a lot of them seem like detoxification, which is quite an interesting observation. Perhaps it's a toxicity issue. This is something that, again, we look at in the course in the academy, but it's certainly worthwhile exploring. Things like diarrhea, even inflammation, rashes, fatigue, a lot of these things indicate elimination and drainage. But of course, I don't negate the fact that there is deficiency of whole natural food, nature, energy, which constitutes the structure and thus the function of our bodies. Whole food restores this function, not because of molecules in the whole food, not because of the so-called enzymes or the so-called isolated chemicals, whatever, cofactors. It's because of the essence, the energy that cannot be mimicked in a laboratory. There is a structure, a life essence, a context to nature, right? The whole is greater than the parts. You can break an orange down into all its magic white powder, isolated chemicals, but you'll never be able to recreate an orange in the laboratory, right? Only nature can produce such beauty and structure. The terrain truly heals when the relationships with our natural world are restored. You can't bring balance to a body by forcing isolated inputs. The same goes for minerals, right? You take magnesium, you feel better for a little while, you stop taking it, then you feel worse. It's like, who are we kidding, right? We're not actually healing. We're just temporarily suppressing the symptoms. We need to get back to, again, our food systems, our farmers, producing our own food or gathering, hunting our own food. People overlook this as, oh, that's too simple, it can't be the case. But listen, this is where true health and vitality comes from. We're all concerned with feeling better, right? We feel like shit. We have the brain fog, the rashes, the other skin issues, gut issues, psychological issues. We're trying to improve our lives, the quality of our lives. This is done through simplicity. We don't need to overcomplicate it. Laboratory science has extremely overcomplicated life in general. And it's not science at all, right? Because it avoids the use of the scientific method because we don't control for the 20 steps of adding petroleum, lead, acetate, and cyanide to an orange to supposedly get vitamin C. Something that I always focus on more is restoring our microbial world. Because if we accept that vitamins exist, we need microbes in our gut to synthesize and transfer these vitamins into our systems, right? Our bodies are not able to uptake nutrients whatsoever without a microbial system, just like plants cannot take minerals up from the soil without a microbial system. So when you kill the life in the soil, you kill the life in the plant. Talk to any farmer in the entire world, or geologist, or any soil scientist, they'll tell you that there is no soil that's deficient. Soil is only deficient in life. There's no soil that's deficient in minerals, right? Minerals are plentiful. It's only deficient in life. So when we lack the microbes because we kill them with pesticides and we use synthetic fertilizers, we're missing the context once again. We're avoiding life in our food, and again, at the root, this is where our problems are coming from. The answer is to reconnect with our food systems, not to take isolated chemicals. Feeling better temporarily is not a replacement for healing. Most interestingly with vitamins is that you go to a vitamin laboratory and you'll not be able to tell the difference between a pharmaceutical lab and a vitamin lab. It's the same factories, the same chemistry, the same processes, the same inputs, the same mindset and approach. It's suppression. It's not healing. Vitamins are just greenwashed pharma, and most, if not all, isolated chemicals are the same. Just because your supplement company has alchemy in the name or natural nature on the bottle doesn't mean that's actually true. To be honest, it's quite a good marketing scheme. The supplement industry actually makes far more money than the pharmaceutical one, and it's just medicine with better branding. So we so-called escaped the matrix just to go into some pseudo matrix that's selling you the same nonsense. You didn't wake up at all, and that's what the terrain paradigm is all about. This is why we call it a paradigm, because it's a true shift in perspective and understanding from the ground up. It's not a fear-based approach, right? It's not a laboratory science approach to the world, science, and our understanding of life. It is a complete paradigm shift, right? There is no fear. You know, the answers are very simple. They're free. They're well within your control to go and connect with your food systems. Tomorrow, it's going to cost you, hundreds of dollars to buy all of these different supplements to so-called implement balance into your life, when you could just go and talk to your farmer, spend far less every single week, and get true nourishment while supporting the people who are actually creating nourishment from the ground. Health is not manufactured. It is cultivated through relationship with nature. You cannot supplement your way to health. If you want to learn more about these topics, you should join the Beyond Terrain Academy. There's a full course on the whole vitamin argument if you're interested in the science behind that, the logical scientific argument, looking at all of the isolation papers in depth. There's coursework and lectures as well, so make sure you go and check that out. The links will be down below. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Nevertheless, if you want to work one-on-one, just reach out. And I hope that I've empowered you in this video here today. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Make sure to do all that like, comment, subscribe and stuff. But I appreciate you all. Take care.